lot of the major tech YouTubers are out there unboxing and reviewing the M1 iPad Pros. And because I'm not a big tech channel, I don't have one, I can't afford one, I don't have one sent to me from Apple, and I'm still paying my iPad Pro off from my wireless plan. So I decided for this video, what I want to do is kind of just talk about some thoughts I had with the M1 iPad Pro, whether it's something with the design or some choices that they decided to make compared to other choices they could have made. So let's just jump right into the video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my 2020 iPad Pro as a bit of a example to show you the things that I want to show you or talk about. Now, my thoughts about the M1 iPad Pro is completely opinionated. It's all my opinion, and if you have a different opinion, that's fine. But it is some thoughts that I had in terms of what they decided to do this time and what they could have done differently. So what I want to start with is the whole thing within the M1 processor being added to the iPad. Now, there's been a debate on whether or not someone who has an iPad Pro who's from 2020 should upgrade to the M1 iPad Pro. And that really comes down to a couple of things. Because one thing that you need to know is when it comes to getting the M1 iPad Pro, if you already have a 2020 iPad Pro, the only major upgrade you're getting is the M1 chip. Aside from that, any other major improvement would only come from the 12.9-inch model, and I'll get into that in a bit. But if you have the 2020 model like I do, and you don't really care about that new M1 chip, then you're fine with the model you already have. The M1 chip is meant to be, better, faster, more powerful, but it also doesn't allow you to use Mac-specific applications since all the new Mac devices have the M1 chip. And it's understandable. People need to understand it's still not a computer. It's still just a tablet. It does have computer capabilities, but it's still a tablet, and that's completely fine. So it comes down to this decision of, are you able to afford the newer model and not have that take a huge hit on your finances? If you like the newest and greatest stuff and you're fine buying the new model every single year, then by all means go for the M1 iPad Pro. But something you need to keep in mind is the difference between the 11-inch model and the 12.9-inch model. I have an 11-inch model iPad Pro, and that's because I am comfortable with this iPad in terms of its size, its weight. I initially didn't think there was that much of a difference in size between this one and the 12.9 until a friend of mine recently showed me her 12.9 model, and I gotta say, it certainly is bigger.
That's what she said!
And what I mentioned about the difference between the two models is that the 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro has the XDR Liquid Retina display. So it is supposed to be a much more vibrant, colorful, much better display for the newer iPad, but it's only on the 12.9-inch model. It's not on the 11-inch model. So if you're buying the 11-inch M1 iPad Pro, you're basically buying the same iPad just with the M1 chip and maybe a couple of extra spec additions. And that's about it. And that kind of sucks for those who want to buy the 11-inch model because some people may like the smaller device. Like I said, this thing is really not that tiny. I don't know how well you can see it in frame, but it's really not that small. It's actually a decent sized tablet. And for those who want to buy the M1 11-inch, they're not going to get that XDR Liquid Retina. They're going to get just a basic Liquid Retina, a slightly improved one from this one, but it's really not much different. So that's one of the things I am curious about, why they decided to go with that route. It's the same thing with the iMacs they're releasing, where they are releasing two different models, one of which does have more ports available than the other. I think one has more USB-C ports. I think they have two more ports. And the higher end iMacs also have a Ethernet port on the power adapter, whereas the lower cost iMacs don't have that Ethernet option. So it makes me wonder why they're cutting out these different specifications, these different features for the cheaper model when it should be focused primarily on screen size, I think. I think if the model is smaller, it should be cheaper. I think the specs should still be the same overall. It kind of compare it to buying a PlayStation 5, whether you're getting the standard one or the all digital model. It's the same console that does the exact same thing in terms of performance and experiences. The only difference is one cannot accept physical games. So that should be the same thing with Apple in terms of their screen size. If it's a smaller screen size, that should be the only difference between the two models. Now, moving on from there, I want to talk about their Magic Keyboard because I also have the Magic Keyboard from the 2020 model, and I actually did get a D-brand skin on mine, just to like have it get a bit more protection from the outer design if I take it out with me, which I do. I use it for work sometimes. So they did make a new Magic Keyboard for the newer models. They did make one in white, and if you have this iPad Magic Keyboard already from the 2020 iPads, you don't need to buy the newer Magic Keyboard unless you want it in white, which at that point, you're better off getting a D-brand skin. Because there really is no difference between the two keyboards. The only difference is the new color in white, and there's a slight difference in that the M1 iPad will fit a bit better into the newer Magic Keyboard, but it's not a big difference to where you have to buy it. It'll still fit in the previous keyboard, comfortably and fine. So don't go and get the new Magic Keyboard if you already have a previous Magic Keyboard from last year. But adding on to the Magic Keyboard, it made me wonder why they only added one new color when the iPad Airs came in a range of different colors like red, blue, and green. They could have made a purple iPad Air since they did make a purple iPhone 12. And they could have made more Magic Keyboards in those colors. Maybe someone wants to match those keyboards with their iPads. Maybe they don't want to buy a skin like D-brand or Skin It or any of these other companies that support this. But I think they should have made other colors for the keyboard. But that's just one opinion I have on the keyboard, other than why they made a brand new model when it really isn't different, to say the least, And moving on from that, I do have another opinion on what they did with the front-facing camera lens. Now, if you don't know this, for any device, whether it's an iPhone or an iPad or an Android phone or Android tablet, they typically keep the front-facing lens on the top of the iPad. And that's fine if you're thinking of it as a portrait mode, because the iPad standing up is portrait mode. But anyone who buys an iPad who also buys a keyboard, whether it's the Magic Keyboard, whether it's the Logitech Folio keyboard, or another third-party keyboard, they're going to have their iPads in landscape mode. And that makes me wonder, why didn't they just move the lens up here on the top? Because you're still not going to have a completely bezel-less display. There's still going to be some bezels, which I'm fine with. I don't mind bezels. A lot of people hate it. I don't mind it. But why not put the camera lens up here? Now, when talking about the camera lens, the back one is fine where it is. No one really takes pictures or videos with their iPads as far as I know. But the front-facing one is what's important because, number one, you need it to unlock your iPad because it has Face ID, which I want to add to that point. Why didn't they add Touch ID for the new Pros when they did for the Air? They're probably just thinking ahead of, we are hoping to beat this pandemic, so we don't need to add the Touch ID anymore. But that is the most important lens of the two is the front one. And before you disagree with my opinion in a negative way, just know that I had the same opinion about the front-facing lens, basically the same opinion from MKBHD, because he also felt like it's weird to have it on the front. So if you're gonna judge my opinion, you also gotta judge his. I'm just saying. But the reason why I think the lens and the front should be moved is because you're gonna use it not just to unlock your device, but you're gonna use it for FaceTime, Zoom calls, or Facebook video calls, Google Duo, Google Hangouts, whatever you're using, whether it's for work or for personal use, you're gonna have it in landscape mode with your keyboard most likely, because that's also how you get to your USB port, whether you need to add your charger to it or you need to add another accessory like a mouse or something, a USB hub. That's why I think the lens should have gone up here on the top. Apple's response to that, however, is the lens on the newer model is an ultra-wide lens. So it's a solution, sure, but it's not the one I think we should have gotten. But that's pretty much my video for today. I didn't realize how long this video was going. I'm just rambling on about the newer iPads. But in conclusion to this all, I would say The M1 chip is said to be much better in terms of performance and multitasking and all those other, good stuff, making it faster. But this one is fine just as is. And if you were trying to get a new iPad model, you could just get the 2020 Pro because it's gonna be cheaper most likely, and it's probably gonna drop in price as well. Or if you're someone who likes to get the newest stuff and you have the money for it, by all means. I actually have a friend who probably will get the new one despite having the 2020 model because he loves Apple and he's gonna buy all the new products anyway. And I also have a friend who has an older model iPad and they're fine with it. It does what they need it to do. They have the Gen 1 Apple Pencil, so they're fine with what it can do for them. So if you're fine with a good model that does what you need it to do, this is a fine one. But if you have the money for the M1, the M1 could prove to be much better than what it says. So just keep all that in consideration when you decide on which iPad you want to buy, as well as which keyboard you want to buy, because you don't have to get the Magic Keyboard. It's $300 for the 11-inch, $350 for the 12.9-inch. You could just get a Logitech one is like $180, I believe, and there's some off-brand Amazon ones for like $10, $20. But that's my video for today. Thank you for watching. I know it's been a while. I took a bit of a hiatus trying to focus on some projects I have. I have projects at work I'm trying to complete, and I have other projects for videos in the future, so look out for those. But don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment in this video if you want to. Let me know which iPad you have, if you do have one, if you have the Magic Keyboard, if you're buying the M1 model, if you're waiting for next year's model. Let me know and I will be happy to respond. I'm Anthony Olan Tech, and I will see you guys next time.